a flat earth.
And that's how I met Teddy. And
They were funny.
they were
They
fun.
were fun. They were very, very.
Eddie Wood, Hazel Rigby, Maida
Maida
Withers.
Withers, and Son.
Yes.
No, and there was a fifth.
There was a fifth.
Alice Botmeyer.
Yes,
Alice
thank you,
Trotmeyer.
Alice Trotmeyer.
Oh.
And then Cheryl Dalton's song about their convention in a phone booth.
Mhm.
Yes.
And Teddy was, I think though, of the bunch, the funniest.
Mhm.
She wanted to do a demonstration up on at the Washington Monument, where she wanted somebody to streak across some section saying, with a sign banner saying, "Stripped of my rights." And then they also invented the Little Mormon plane. And what they discovered was it only cost about $500 to hire the Little Mormon plane in Salt Lake City and fly one of those beach banners
Oh, the banner.
around
Yes.
the tabernacle.
Oh, one conference was going on.
Yes, and so one of them was Mother in Heaven, which is one of the Mormon gods. Mother in Heaven loves Mormons for the ERA. And my personal favorite, because we later made it into a sign, and they had a sign-making party at my house, that it was, "Come pick at the prophet and save your signs for the Pope." The Mormon prophet was in town, and 3 weeks later, the Pope came to town. And my favorite sign of all of those was "Patriarchy is malarkey."
Malarkey. Yes.
And we did that
And
around the temple.
that was the year that they flew that around the temple, was the year that they decided to excommunicate someone.
Yes, yes.
That was a bit more than the Mormon fatherhood could
But it was so
stand.
funny, all these signs.
78, she was excommunicated in
Yes.
the fall of 78.
Yep.
Did anybody ever
No, it was
go?
December.
Yeah, I have
December.
pictures.
Yes, we have photographs.
It
It was
was cold,
December.
it was late.
It was
well,
freezing.
not
Oh,
that,
it was
the latter part
freezing
of
that day. It was
78, yeah.
freezing.
Freezing.
Yeah, and when
And the
they,
wind was blowing.
oh, when they first put her on trial, I had hypoglycemia, so I have trouble with sugar, not as much as I used to when I first went on the diet. But the night before, on Friday, we went to Giffords, and I really splurged on an Alpine sundae. The only time I would have that much sugar is when it was late at night and I could go home and go straight to bed. So about 7:30 on Saturday morning, I get this call from Pat Harley, and here I have this Alpine Sunday hangover. And I sort of rolling out of bed because the phone is ringing, and Pat says, "They're excommunicating Sonia Johnson in Sterling,
At the Sterling Steak.
at the Sterling Steak at 11 o'clock. And I said, "Oh, shit." And I was so mad because I had this hangover. And the first thing I did was I got out my shirt that said, "God is coming and is she pissed?" And I put it on, and I went around and I started collecting all of our banners and getting Rob out, our son, and getting Hugh out so we can get in the car and go out to the stake. And I said, "Georgia, you're going to be the highest ranking now person there. Change your shirt." So I did. I had my Celestial Seasons red zinger tee that I wore for that. And we stood there, and they kept delaying the trial, and it would kind of go on and on and on. And I hadn't brought a Bible. I brought all the banners. I hadn't brought a Bible. We decided we needed to have some kind of liturgy at the end. So I asked the Mormons if I could borrow a Bible. And we were there all day. We kept asking them if we could use their bathroom, and they said yes. And so I had their Bible, and so we rehearsed our liturgies. We had one if she was excommunicated and one if she wasn't. Well, lo and behold, they had decided that there was absolutely too much publicity. They simply couldn't do what they wanted to do with so many people looking at her. So they decided that this was sort of like a grand jury hearing, and they would have the trial at a later date. So we had to come up with liturgy plan C at the last minute, so we could celebrate the day. So then they decided to move the trial to Oakton at the last minute. The trial was gonna be in December, and we thought, see, we planned very carefully. Okay, it's gonna be cold. They're not gonna let us use their Bibles again. They're not gonna let us use their bathrooms again. How are we gonna handle this? Well, we'll rent porta-janes. And I think it was you that called up, somebody called up about renting porta-janes. And the woman was pro-ERA and knew about Sonia Johnson. It was in all the papers and all the media. And she said, oh my goodness, don't do that. For the same amount of money, you can rent an RV. And not only will you have a bathroom, but you have a warm place to go, and you'll be able to make yourself hot drinks. So we were all set to do that, and then they decided, it was gonna be in Sterling, and there was nothing in Sterling. Then they decided at the last minute to move it to Oakton, right? They thought they would fool us. Oakton, the Oakton stake is back to back with a Unitarian church. So we didn't have to rent the porta-janes, we didn't have to rent the RV. We called up the Unitarian church, can we rent your church? They said, oh my goodness, no, you can have it for free. So we could go over there and use their bathrooms and get the hot coffee and get the hot chocolate.
And warm our greasy toes.
And it was freezing. It was so cold.
The only person who was warm was Pat Schroeder.
Right.
Because she was from Colorado.
That was another thing, as, this was back in the days before word processors. I'm typing up the whole program. I have song leaders. My husband and I are gonna co-MC it. We're gonna have a family theme. I'm through half the program. I get this call from National Now with Alice Cohan, and she says, Georgia, Schroeder wants to come to the rally. Call her office. And I thought, uh-oh. So I called the office, and Pat Schroeder came on the phone, and I was up against the deadline, and I don't type very well. That's not what I got my degrees in. And she said she wanted to come, and I said, Pat, we really want to have you, but I got to tell you, I got the first page typed up, so we can't put you in the beginning, but we could put you in the second half of the program. And Pat said, oh, that's okay. I don't care. That's fine. We just have to be there. They're going to take our sister out and try to cut off her head in the middle of the night, and we can't let them do it. And I said, well, okay, it's going to be a family theme, my husband and me. Great, I'll bring my whole family. And they came in all their Colorado gear, and the kids still remember that, because I've talked to them in previous campaigns.
Huh.
It was so freezing cold, we had a flashlight in one hand and a song sheet in the other. And between speeches or songs or whatever, at first I told people to clap their hands, but we couldn't clap our hands. We didn't want to take our mittens off. We needed the flashlight, we needed the song sheet. So I said, okay, stamp your feet. So we would stamp our feet. Well, it was so cold that it was like one frozen steel plate between the parking lot and the steakhouse. And Sonia said that the best thing about the trial was every time we would stamp our feet, the guys would go, because it sounded like there was a thundering herd of buffalo ready to run through the steakhouse.
I think I visited Salt Lake City 3 times in the late 80s, early 90s.
Mhm.
And each time I would go to the Tabernacle grounds. And they had lovely young women greet me and welcome me to the ground there, and they'd say, and what brings you here? What is it? I said, well, I'm here actually as a tribute to my friend Sonia Johnson. Perhaps you've heard of her. She was one of the co-founders of Mormons for the ERA. And pretty soon I had a whole little group of these young women who'd never heard of Sonia Johnson or the ERA or anything about it gathered around me. And it was always sort of an interesting test to see how quickly a male person would arrive, relieving the young women of their responsibilities to welcome me to the Tabernacle grounds and make sure that I had no more interaction with anybody except a male person. And they actually got quite specific and inquisitive my purging from the Democratic Party and her excommunication from the church, and how very similar they were, and the way they were handled, what they told us about what the process would be, how they ended up violating the process that they had outlined to us, so that we didn't know what was happening, so we couldn't prepare for what, and it was incredibly similar. I think in the end, I'm not even sure they actually had charges. I mean, Sonia was expecting a trial where she would be able to defend herself against the charges, but they really they didn't end up using that format.
Well, they didn't at yours hearing
Neither
either.
mine either, no charges. You get to make a statement, and then we're gonna vote to purge it, right?
But they also talked. Pardon me, my Robert's Rules is coming out. And then somebody made a motion and they voted on it.
Right.
In other words, they were talking about nothing. And then all of a sudden there's a motion and
You're
no.
talking about Marianne.
Well, yes, but not about a specific motion. They were just saying whatever they wanted to, and then all of a sudden a motion that had never been mentioned gets made and never discussed.
Never seconded either?
I'm sure.
It was probably seconded. And I remember one of the women were going out saying, oh, I think whoever he was did a wonderful job chairing that meeting, don't you? And I looked at her and said,
Fairfax O'Flaherty.
oh, I don't think so. I think every rule in Robert's Rules was just violated, but, you know.
David Bush, who was he was on the committee, he voted not to purge me, but he showed up with the chair's mistress and sat in the back of the room, trying to throw him off. And I actually ran into him, maybe 5 years ago, in an elevator in Washington, D.C. I didn't recognize him. He had aged a lot. He had aged a lot, yes, Lee. And he said, oh, I remember you. We had all that issue around some state senator or something. I said, well, you don't quite have it right, Dan. Anyway, no, so it was amazingly similar process.
Mhm.
Yeah, and
Star Chamber.
yeah, very much a sort of star chamber procedure.
Patriarchy is patriarchy.
Even when it's women were implementing it. But I don't think they necessarily had women implementing it at the top of the state.
No, there was, no.
Yeah. But it does pain me that Sonia, her relationship, well, in our discussions, her relationship with the church was so much more profound and life encompassing than my relationship with the Democratic Party was, which was pretty profound. It was all my adult life I had been. I ran for the Democratic Party in Alexandria as a McCarthy kid. I ran as an outlier protester, and basically to prove that there was no place for people like me in the Democratic Party, but then I won. Anyway, but still, it was not my whole life. It had not been my whole life as it was with Sonia. I mean, the church was so central.
And
Who
you know,
she was.
her mother was in a plural marriage.
Yeah, I did know that. I probably could not have remembered it, but now that she said it.
And she was a descendant of the founders, you know,
Well,
leading
everybody
families.
was.
You know. No, but she was like direct.
So
And
everybody to
was.
give it a rap is,
Yes,
yeah.
I
we
think
think
so
you're
too.
tired.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of
Mhm.
time, a lot of
You're gonna,
emotion.
how long is it gonna take you to edit all this?
Oh, I'm not editing. The whole point of this is that it's just
Oral history, and it
the
is.
way
It's
that
oral
it happens
history.
right now.
You can listen to this
know.
on YouTube.
I'm posting it as soon as I can figure out how that works. The learning curve on this is kind of funny.
Yeah, it might
Posted in
be good to
sections.
index
Yeah.
it somehow.
Yeah, that's one of the
No
things.
one's
I-
gonna listen to it.
Yeah, that's
how
what-
many
but
hours
you-
a
yeah,
day.
you should
splice it
Well, we're
probably
gonna
so that.
archive it too.
Yeah.
I
I
have
have
to
been watching
BCU has a thing. and-
list.
Well, there'll be
the
some
subjects
things
and
you're
how
gonna
they're
cut out, because we
edited.
did have some of these long pauses.
Yeah, if the sound isn't good or something in some
Yeah.
part.
Well, no, I just mean that people will probably click on it more if they're shorter.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah.
That's a good
yeah.
thing.
And try to interrelate some
Ken,
of the
is
stories
there
that are connected.
some way
over
that
time.
we can get a copy?
Send us the website or something?
Oh, of course.
I will work that out and let you know. Yeah, definitely, definitely. I
Because
want
among
y'all to
other
have
things,
access to it.
we had hoped a few years ago to do this sort of thing with Lisa Kathleen at the Smithsonian, and we never got the opportunity to do it. And if you would not mind, I would like to give it to Lisa Kathleen to put with the banners and the other things from, because so many of the women here were involved
Yeah.
in that, and I think it would be wonderful.
Yeah.
So if you do not
I
mind.
would love that. Because eventually we hope that all of these interviews are gonna wind up, archived in that kind of a way, or perhaps in the future in the Women's History Museum, when it has a real big permanent home, and maybe clips can be used and tourists can bump into them, you know, which would be fantastic. I am, so that you know, I've had a conversation with Barbara Irvine, who's living in New Jersey now, and she told me a lot about Sonia, and gave me the names of several of her books, and which I immediately went out and bought. And I'm gonna, seriously, I'm just like reading them all in sequence, and I'm going to make sure to have like a parallel archive with these videos that has books and texts that are published by the women who were involved, or stories that are being written by other people, so that there's a really big multi-dimensional history here. I know she was really, really important and a big spiritual force for a long time, and kind of a lightning rod after that. And I think that part of your world and the history that we are living from it need to be collected and lived this too. And I like that she did write it so that we can have her words. You know,
It would be really nice if you could find her and interview her, because remember she went on that tour, Mormons for the ERA, along, she teamed with Housewives for the ERA, Virginia Housewives for the ERA. What's that one? No. And
I
they
knew she
did,
did speaking engagements, I took her
they
on
did
one of those.
did a whole tour of Virginia right before one of the sessions, and they did a lot of things. And also she learned not to shave her legs when she came to, it was a great freeing moment of her life. When she came to lobby in Richmond, we had so many women in the room that you really couldn't have very much bathroom access. That's when we were sleeping horizontally on the beds.
Yeah. I've tried to find her, and the trail kind of goes cold in Costa Rica. Yeah, she left. And the people that I have been able to find who kind of know the last parts of where she has lived and how she's been doing don't know a whole lot after that.
Did you talk with Alice Butler?
Not yet.
Do you have a number for her?
No.
Oh, I can give you
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, we're gonna have a big confab over phone numbers and contact information for some more people, so, and when you and I talk, we can put that together too. I'd
Who
love
was
to
the
be able
woman
to
she
share.
was living with in Arlington before she went to New Mexico?
I lost track